Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I want to thank you all for coming. Today's topic is launching your Breakbulk career. We all know, I'm sure, that this is a very tough job market right now. But I want you to know, students that are on this webinar, that you are today taking the first step in launching your career. So thank you for coming. I hope that you got a lot out of this. I'm sure that you will, because everyone on this panel today is committed to bringing forward the next generation in our industry. Breakbulk Events has a long history of supporting industry education. And like in many years, consecutive years past, this fall at Breakbulk Americas, November 3rd through 5th, we will have a special program for students, and students are free to come to Breakbulk Americas. So I invite you as we get a little closer to register, and hopefully we'll see you there. But in the meantime, we wanted to give you a head start on finding your first job. So I want to explain to you how this webinar today will unfold. So first, we'll hear from our hosts, Marco Poisler and Margaret Kidd, and then we will move on to sector overviews. And then what I think is going to be very exciting is we'll move into 10-minute sessions of Q&A, so with each sector leader. So you can see the schedule here on the screen. I invite you to check out as many as you are interested in, certainly all of them if you'd like, and have your questions ready for these people, because this is a great opportunity for you to ask them and really define the path of your career. So do note the question header up on the top right of your screen. And you can type in questions whenever you want, and we'll get to as many as we can and pretty much reserve those for the Q&A sessions. All right, so now we will bring Marco and Margaret up on the stage.
Thank you.
Okay, so Margaret or Marco, who's going first?
I believe Marco is.
All right, Marco, let's go.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Really glad here to share some of our experience. First, as introduction, my name is Marco Poisler. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Global Energy and Capital Projects at UTC Overseas. We've got 46 offices in 26 countries. And just wanted to let the big message that Breakbulk is an exciting career. I've been to 82 countries around the world, traveling not only to the offices, but for project execution. And it's just been an amazing time and basically learning to learn every day. There's not a day that I don't come home that I've learned something new, whether it's a country or a new way of loading. I'm very excited to be an adjunct professor at the University of Houston. I earlier this year was teaching the course Project Logistics, which was formed by Margaret Kidd and also the late Dr. Cheng. It was a really well thought out course, and I stepped into that. Project Logistics is an interdisciplinary study involving project finance, transportation, loading. So it's one of these fields here where you've got to know a little bit about everything. And there's a lot of change, and you're always dealing with change. So it's never boring. It's really an exciting career to continue. So everything from general cargo, air freight, container, you really touch everything. And also with project finance. And I'm also excited to be teaching this semester transportation economics and policy, which really ties something that's close to my heart. I did study in DC at the Foreign Service School, was also a past chairman of the Exporters Maritime Council, where we go to and are very active in monitoring government-related issues for the transportation industry. And one of the key areas there was the Education Committee, which Jake Swanson and other panelists here formed. And through that and a number of initiatives, we were engaging with a number of the universities, but also with the University of Houston. And through that, I'm very excited to participate as an adjunct professor at University of Houston, and hopefully give a little bit about my start in the career. I had looking for an internship in New York City, and was fortunate. I was actually selling cable TV and said, I really want to get something productive. And I went to the World Trade Center floor by floor. And that was how I got my first summer job, actually, in the World Trade Center in a global logistics company, and learned a lot on the job. Was invited back Christmas breaks and between Christmas and New Year's and Easter. So I really worked enough to get in '92 a full-time job in that company, and constantly looked for training. The World Trade Institute had a certificate program on the 50th floor, and I took every certificate I could, learning there. Took classes at NYU, and networking. That is something that I constantly did in my career to continue to grow, and that's something I strongly recommend to everyone listening out there. Don't stop networking, and keep on taking every certificate, every type of course to keep on learning.
All right, my turn. I think I have a PowerPoint.
It's coming, Margaret. Here we go.
Okay, thank you so much, Leslie. So my name's Margaret Kidd, and I'm the program director for the Supply Chain and Logistics Technology program at University of Houston. We're the largest program in the city, but I wanted to share today more about how I got to this position. So I started out with a general business degree as an undergrad, went to Wall Street as a financial consultant. Some of you may know the word stockbroker. It's the same thing. My story is so similar to Marco's. I also went every floor on the World Trade Center looking for a position. Ended up on Madison Avenue with one of the top brokers at the time back in the late 80s. And that's how I got my foot in the door. And it was a really exciting time. And so I have over 15 years in the financial services industries. I decided in my early 40s, I wanted to do something more meaningful. I wasn't sure what it was, but I went and did a master's degree in cross-cultural studies. And that led me on to a doctoral program in urban planning and environmental policy. And that's truly what got me into logistics, because I was studying ports and cities, how they interface. I was studying transportation. I was looking at economic development and sustainability. And all of us know that ports are major engines of growth for their communities, especially here in Houston, in Beaumont, and any major city. So I've been at U of H for 4 years, the last 2 years as the program director, and I'm also full-time faculty. And so what I wanted to share with you is really a little bit about probably why I am the program director. I'm very active on social media, and that is to get out messaging related to my students and our program. And I think a lesson learned, a very valuable one for all of our students, whether you're in high school or you're in school or you graduated, is you need a professional LinkedIn profile. You need to have a real photograph with nothing in the background, just you and your business clothes. And you need to be able to show what you've accomplished, your awards, your activities, any kind of papers or research you've published. And for my students, your capstone experience. I mean, this is all stuff that our industry partners like to see. Now, currently, I'm right around 3,000 people that are on my LinkedIn, and that includes industry partners and students. And I follow a number of major corporations and a number of thought leaders. And I use some of the posts that I see from other sites to share with my followers as a thought leader. So I think one of the most important skill sets for students and young professionals is to learn how to speak in public. Okay, and it takes a lot of practice. In a typical year, I might have at least 10 public speaking engagements. This has been a little bit of an unusual year. This year, I've been a speaker at one of the transportation clubs. I moderated a panel for the Port of the Future, which was a major port conference. Obviously, I'm a panelist here today, and I'll be a panelist on a global energy webinar next week. And this is just, we're only halfway through the year, so much more to come. I encourage my students, those of you that are listening from U of H, I'm sure some of you have been out and volunteered with myself or one of my colleagues, John Hark over at Texas A&M Galveston, but we're really big on engaging our students back into the community. A big believer in digging in, rolling up your sleeves. I've been very involved at the university itself. I serve on faculty senate. I also serve as an advisor to our student group. And then obviously Port of Houston Partners in Maritime Education is an organization that ties all of us from industry to academia to Breakbulk Americas into one really cohesive group. We look forward every year to participating in their fall conference. This has been an unusual year, to say the least. I decided back in first week of February, after our Project Logistics conference, to make a film about supply chain risk, COVID, best practices. And as a result of this low budget, or shall we say no budget film, I've had over 25 interviews, whether it was on TV, radio, or media. And so my message to students, industry, anyone that'll listen is, some of those things you do just because you have that intellectual curiosity can lead to other really good things that promote your business or your students. I starred 5 students that spoke 5 different languages in my film. It was real world. That's who University of Houston is. And I was very proud of these students that spent 2 weekends with me. I think one of the questions that comes up regularly is, what kind of skill sets do you need for logistics or supply chain project cargo? And the first thing off the top of my head is you've always got to be a lifelong learner. Tagging on to what Marco said, you've always got to be upping your game, whether it's a certification or it's a workshop or hanging out with someone that's a better logistician than yourself, okay? You learn from others. One of the things we do in my program is there's lots of team projects. Students don't like them, but the reality is logistics is a team sport. If you can't work in a team, you will not be successful in the industry. So we try to give you a safe ground in class to start working on negotiating culture, negotiating conflict in the form of applied projects. And I'm not going to go through everything I have listed here, but I think things that really stick out to me is, you got to be able to network, got to be a team player. You've got to be able to write technical reports for your boss once you get hired, okay? And you got to be able to make real citations from the experts using empirical research to back up your suggestions. And my biggest advice, and this is from my own experience, is be known as the person that's going to get the job done. That has always got me where I needed to go. You don't want to complain about working late or working weekends. That's the reality in the real world. In a real profession, it's a full-time, meaning 24/7, if you really are looking to move up the ladder. So yeah, we're faced with this thing called COVID, but guess what? There's still so many opportunities. I mean, we're in the 4th largest city in America, breakbulk capital of the United States, and there are part-time positions, there's temporary positions, there's volunteer work, there are opportunities to do certifications. And for some of you, this might even be a great time to consider applying to graduate school. Most graduate programs have released any requirement to do the GRE or GMAT right now. And so it's a great time to consider continuing your training. But remember, at the end of the day, you need to take any opportunity to get your foot in the door. The most important thing is get your foot in the door. And we've all had to do that. My first job on Wall Street, I made $5 an hour. Okay, yeah, I had a degree, but that's how I got in the door. The rest is history. So that will serve you well if you will take advantage of opportunities that are presented to you. I did want to address recovering from setbacks, whether it's personal or professional. I mean, life is not linear, okay? It's going to be cyclical. So you need to have a plan. You need to have friends or peers that are supportive of you, and you don't want to let history define you. You want to define history. And I'm going to share 2 very personal stories, and I'm going to keep them very brief, but many of you are aware, my colleague, Dr. Ching, passed away the last day of December, and I suddenly inherited, not only was he a close friend, but I inherited our graduate program and undergraduate program and preparations for his funeral. I didn't let that get in my way of what the mission was. The mission to his family, to show love and get them through a hard time, but also to get our students in the program running forward. I think that this is going to be really corny, and most of you on this webinar, with the exception of Ernest maybe, don't know who Neil Diamond is, but he was a singer, and he has this song called Coming to America. And so when I went to New York City, in my mind, I just kept the image of I was landing on that boat from Europe in the early 1900s with nothing on my back but, you know, what I was wearing, and no one was going to help me. I was going to have to help myself. So I could not allow anything to get in my way. I had to outwork everyone else, and I had to outthink. And I love this song. When I was putting together this presentation, I got tears in my eyes. And I think I'm going to have to change the slide or I'll start crying, but it's a really meaningful thing to me, because you think about how our country was founded and what people had to do to survive and move ahead. And I think it's a lesson learned. So I want to close on this last slide. A friend of mine from high school had this on their Facebook page, and it's called 3 Pulse, and it tracks, you can plug in where you travel to. So I have been all over Latin America, Europe, parts of Africa, some of the Middle East, Southeast Asia. And for those of you who haven't traveled logistics and supply chain, that is your ticket to see the world. I want to encourage you to go to this app and click on places you want to see and keep that posted somewhere. Let that be your motivation. Let that be your dream, to see the world. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Thank you.
That's great, Margaret. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. I'm only sorry we didn't have your song queued up.
I would have cried.
All right. Now we're going to go into a segment of quick overviews of each of the job sectors from each of them are leaders in their company and represent these very important sectors with exciting jobs. So I would like to introduce, up first is Sergio Savoy from McDermott International, who is going to talk to us about engineering, procurement, and construction, better known as EPCs.
Hi, and first of all, thank you all for inviting me to be a part of this. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm hopeful that I can lend a little bit of insight onto what is the work with the EPC. Obviously, I'll keep this short, but just to give everyone an introduction into how I got into the logistics world in general. Funny enough, it happened in a coffee shop. There was a colleague, someone that became a colleague, but I met at that coffee shop while I was going to university that was across the street. And over a short period of time, we got to know each other because we would see each other regularly in the mornings. And long story short, he offered me the opportunity at what amounted to it in a freight forwarding company where he was working. And just a few short weeks later, I started my career in logistics. And I was lucky because they allowed me to continue to attend school, and I was able to graduate a few years later. And by that time, I was firmly in the logistics field, working for a freight forwarding company. But eventually, I ended up coming on to Chicago Bridge and Iron, which was recently purchased by McDermott International, and thus that's how I ended up within that company. And to give I guess a short explanation of what EPCs do, they put together the three main facets of that business: engineering, procurement, and construction. And logistics falls, depending on who you ask, technically under the procurement function. But really, logistics is involved throughout the whole process. And I think that that's probably the most important thing for anyone who's looking to be in this field to realize. And certainly if you're looking for network opportunities with people in the EPC world, it's important for you to remind them and to let them know that, of course, you understand that logistics is a component of the supply chain that touches upon all of those major facets of their business. And so to explain a little bit about that, obviously logistics is transporting a material, equipment from wherever it's being purchased from or fabricated over to a final destination, usually the construction site. And within the supply chain, there are many different stakeholders that get involved. And as a logistician within that process, you have to be able to organize all the different disciplines so that they work with each other effectively to make sure that you can get the necessary information that's required to organize the transportation to meet the project schedule and certainly to meet the budgets that have been established for the project. And that can be quite an undertaking at times because oftentimes you'll find that those disciplines aren't necessarily working with each other in an efficient way. An example will be, a high-level example would be the design of a piece of equipment. Is that piece of equipment being designed to make it easily transported? And a lot of times you'll find that the specifications that are used to design the equipment don't always take into account what's required to be able to transport them from origin to destination. And as a logistician, you sort of have to interject yourself into the process to make sure that you're able to demonstrate what needs to be done to facilitate the transportation of that item. Because at the end of the day, if it's designed in such a way where it's very difficult to transport, it's usually not impossible to get the transport done, but it will always be more expensive than it would otherwise be if it had been designed with transport in mind. So that's just one example of how my job is to be able to communicate that sort of information throughout the supply chain and all the different people that are involved. And
Sergio, it's Leslie. Yeah, we're going to have to move on. So sorry, but you will have the Q&A session so we can hear a lot more from Sergio in that section. So on to project forwarding with Jake Swanson from DHL.
Everyone, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Jake Swanson. I work with DHL Industrial Projects. I oversee our engagement on capital projects and working together with our EPC contracting clients. And so what does it mean to work with a project forwarder or work in freight forwarding? Well, freight forwarding essentially helps to connect cargo owners or project owners with carriers and develop transport solutions that will help them deliver their material from point A to point B, from origin to destination. And so all of the details, coordination that's involved with moving a container or a complex heavy lift type of piece from its point of fabrication, point of manufacturing, all the way to delivery to a job site, including the ocean, trucking, rail, air freight, whatever it takes to move those pieces from point A to point B. That's where you see a freight forwarder get involved. And so what entails, or what does it take to work in freight forwarding? It takes the ability to come up with solutions, to connect different actors, whether it be the cargo owner, the trucking company, the air freight company, put the pieces all together to develop a solution that works. And so, when it comes to opportunities that are available to you students and to others, I think there's a lot there within the freight forwarding sector. Within a freight forwarding company, you have air freight division, you have an ocean freight division, you have people that are focused on trucking, rail, ocean chartering, air chartering. You have people that are involved in customs brokerage, documentation. You have people that are purely focused on operation management, business development, marketing, you name it. If it's within the logistics industry, within a freight forwarder, you're going to have people that are involved in those types of operations. And so also when it comes to forwarding, there's lots of different aspects to forwarding. There's general freight forwarding, where you're moving commodities, you're moving goods that you may consume as when you go to the store. But at the same time, we have project forwarding, which deals more with capital projects in the oil and gas industry, the renewable or mining industries, where you're moving different types of projects, and projects have a start and an end. And so, as a student or as someone who's recently graduated, there's opportunities there for you to get involved in logistics in different categories. It gives you an opportunity to try something, see if that's what you like, and then move into different subcategories of logistics, whether it be going from ocean to air, going from project management to business development. There's different opportunities for people that are trying to get into the logistics industry.
Okay,
some of the skill.
Sorry, we're going to have to pick up on the Q&A with your section on project forwarding, but now we need to move on to Ernest Bezdek at the Port of Beaumont. Welcome, Ernest.
Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks to Breakbulk Events and Media for being an advocate for our industry. The role of organizations such as Breakbulk that allow companies to collaborate with our industry is important to sustain growth in our industry. And I believe I have PowerPoint here, which has not come up yet. But I'll start with my background. I'm basically the Director of Trade Development for the Port of Beaumont, and everything that Marco and Margaret and Jake and Sergio has mentioned so far has been very accurate. And the port, we start with either we start the process if it's inbound cargo into the United States, or we end the process if it's export cargo. It comes from inland and goes out via ship, via ports. So I put together a little slide presentation here, and I believe Breakbulk will allow these to be shared. If not, you're welcome to contact me for my presentation. It's a very interesting presentation put together by Sharday Chick, who is our manager of corporate relations here at the port. And she has dedicated the last several years to promoting jobs with our industry. And on this first slide here, you see 100 jobs you will find at a port. And that's everything from accountants to operations personnel, to truck drivers, to forklift operators, just a variety of jobs listed here, and a variety of options for the students coming out of college or high school. So the way Sharday has arranged this is she's basically broken it down to 3 different areas: high school, diploma, or GED, and what's available to that student, a 2-year degree and or certificates, and then of course a 4-year degree or a graduate degree. And let me emphasize here one other thing. When we refer to ports, we refer to an entire waterway. So, for instance, ExxonMobil is next door to us. They need chemical engineers, and they need people, process plant operators that work within their facilities. So, you know, you kind of lump all of this in, and you can see the variety of jobs that are available throughout the port area. So then she breaks it down per education. For instance, a high school diploma or GED, you can go to work as cybersecurity, electricians, truck drivers, welders, captain, mate, or pilot. And there's a variety, and it also gives you information regarding how many jobs and the salary levels that are available in these fields. 2-year degree, again, broken down: truck driver, welder, chemical equipment operator, or a captain or mate or pilot aboard a tugboat, perhaps. Next is a 4-year degree. Here we have a variety of more management style positions within our industry, and for instance, a terminal manager or operations manager with a port authority would fall under this area. And then they take and they list the requirements for each job: an ordinary seaman, a longshoreman. We've got a drastic shortage of longshoremen, and that includes management positions within the longshore area, working the ships down on the ports and actually moving the cargo to and from the vessel. So we also work directly with a variety of educational institutions, including San Jacinto College, Margaret with U of H, Texas A&M Galveston, and Lamar University. Eric Stromberg, former port executive and president of the American Association of Port Authorities, operates the Master's in Port Management degree at Lamar University, and you can take that course mostly online. And then lastly, something that everybody on the program today has mentioned, networking. I cannot tell you how important relationships are in your career moving forward. You really need to get involved in our industry organizations like ITMA, International Transportation Management Association, Transportation Club of Houston, Houston Transportation Professionals Association. Go out and look for these organizations, sign up. Most of them are fairly nominal fee to sign up. If you're a student, it's even less, and you can get involved, network, and make your plans for the future. All of these can be very important in your job growth. So Thank you for listening today. Look forward to meeting many of you. Come see our beautiful port in Beaumont, Texas. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Ernest. That was fantastic. Let's move right on to Philip Brown. He's with SAL Heavy Lift, a big specialized ocean carrier. Philip.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Philip Brown. Back in 2008, I graduated from Texas A&M University Galveston, and it probably wasn't until about 2007 as a junior that I really even knew what I wanted to do as far as a career within the industry. Going back to what Margaret had mentioned earlier, talking about public speaking, after I graduated from school, I didn't have very many opportunities the first couple of years to do some public speaking, working at a carrier. But then when I joined Fluor in 2012, suddenly I got requested to do public speaking and learned very quickly how much of a phobia I had of it. So over the years, I guess, as I've done more and more of these type webinars and in-person Breakbulk events, it's sort of gone away. But I would definitely encourage you to do some public speaking, whether it's Toastmasters, just to build that level of confidence. I think it's very important when you as a young person go into a meeting with someone that's your senior. It's really good to have that level of confidence when you're conveying information. Going back to what Ernest said as well with the networking, Young Ship is a really great event here in Houston with a lot of young maritime agents to stevedores to freight forwarders to a lot of people in the fuel bunker business as well are attending. So a really good way to network and meet other people in the industry. Going back to school, talking about deciding on what I wanted to do. I was in John Hart's brokerage and chartering class, and the kind of had one of those moments where the light bulb clicked on and said, this is what I want to do. And I remember speaking with John, and he made an introduction to a gentleman in Houston with a local breakbulk multipurpose vessel carrier, BBC. And I reached out to them, said, hey, I'm a student. I'm interested in coming to work for you guys. Ended up having a couple of interviews. Ended up working at BBC from 2008 until 2012. After that, I went to Fluor for 7.5 years. And then I've been at SAL just shy of 1 year as of now. One thing that I think that was difficult for me in the first probably year or so at BBC is kind of learning all the different cultures. I'm from Texas. I grew up in Texas, kind of grew up in a small town. So I didn't have a lot of cultural interaction outside of what we had, let's say, locally. A&M Galveston is a small school, and while it is diverse, it is not as diverse as working in this industry is. So there's a book called The Culture Map that you can look up. It's a great read. It tells you a little bit about what to expect dealing with people in this global industry. And it's not industry specific. It just has to do with learning about other cultures and how to do business in those cultures. I think that's a very valuable thing to learn as a student. Definitely network. And one of the things that's important to remember is this is a pretty small, pretty niche community as well. So always treat people with dignity and respect, because there's a good chance that you'll either work for them or they will work for you, or you'll work together at some point during your career. So I think it's very important, whether it's your teachers in school or people that you're going to interview with, whether you take the job or not, to always be respectful no matter the circumstances.
Great, Philip, that's fantastic. Thank you. Let's move right on to Pierre from Mammut. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pierre Mill. I work for Mammut. It's good to be here today. I have been in the industry for 12 years. I graduated from Texas A&M in College Station. And you know, I can empathize with what a lot of people said already about networking. I'll share this. It was interesting. Philip reached out to me last week, I think Thursday, and say, hey, you want to be on a panel? And I don't even think he had time to finish. And I said, sure, yeah, that sounds good. So came to find out that most of you guys already know. And so that was interesting. Just like Philip was saying, we're a very tight-knit community. A lot of us know each other, and so I like that. Just watch your connections. You'll end up coming across a lot of people that you know. So for me, that's pretty cool. That's a good reason to be in this industry. Something I wanted to offer. I see everyone on the panel, and some of you guys may be wondering, how do we all fit together? And so we have Sergio, who works for an EPC. Sergio may hire Jake, for example, as a forwarder, and Jake might come to Philip because he needs a ship, and he might come to us, Mahmoud, because a piece of equipment needs to be moved over the road. And then, of course, the port fits into that aspect as well. So it's always interesting for me to see how all this really fits together and works so well. So the sector I work in more specifically is the heavy lift and heavy haul industry. When it relates to breakbulk, it's mostly heavy haul, but you could also argue that the lifting portion also really comes into play in the logistical chain. We work in all sorts of different aspects of our business. That's one of the nice things in what we do. You're not restricted to one aspect. So we do petrochemical, there's some civil work. The power industry is huge, of course. Offshore is a part of it. So you're never going to be restricted to one industry. You're going to dabble in all of it. So in our line of work, in my line of work, we deal mostly with oversized or overweight cargo. So we deal with the bigger stuff. So one of the questions I was asked is, why do we enjoy what we do? Well, I can say for me, I play with big toys. That's what we do. We have huge equipment. We have very fascinating equipment. We have some of it which is very rudimentary because it has to be. But we also deal with equipment that is state-of-the-art technology, even equipment that we're not able to purchase on the market. So guess what? We have to make it ourselves. We have to invent it ourselves. So R&D is a big part of what we do as well. I'll give a few pieces of advice, and I'll leave it to that. You know, as you get ready to enter the marketplace, what are the things that are important? And I will say this: there is no magic bullet. And so you guys can't see that, but I have a frame on my wall, and it says 3 things: stay humble, be kind, and work hard. Your parents have been telling you for years, I'm sure they told me for years, work very hard. And that's definitely a big part of it. But attitude is everything. I've hired people in the past that had a very low skill level, but their attitude was 100% there. We can bring people there. So you have a good knowledge base, but not everything will hinge around your attitude and your proactivity and your desire to learn new things. So I think a lot of you guys have a great future around you, in front of you, and you're definitely in the right industry to flourish.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pierre. We're running a few minutes behind, but before we move on to the Q&A, and we'll go back to Sergio with EPCs. But before we do that, I wanted to let you know that we have a follow-up Breakbulk 1 show this Thursday. This is about how to prepare for a job search. So this will be more hands-on skill kind of thing. I've got a maritime and logistics recruiter from California. She'll be on. We also have our friend Alex Strojan, who moved from an EPC to a port, and that's sort of another fairly common move that happens across our industry. The guys have been talking about how it's so close-knit, and that's a great example right there. And then we'll also have our friend Sam Holmes, who got his first job at Breakbulk. So, and I think he's on this webinar today. So hello, Sam. Come back and meet all 3 on Thursday. same time. Love to have you. Looking for a job, think you'll be looking for a job. It will be helpful to you. All right, so let's move right into Q&A with Sergio, EPCs. Welcome back, Sergio.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are welcome. Let's see. So, yes, we've got success. I've got a comment here. Success is 90% hard work and 1% inspiration. That is great. We are going to talk about EPCs. So the rest maybe can drop off for now. Yeah. So Sergio, and people on, please ask your questions either on the questions or the chat, and I'll pick them up for you and we'll ask Sergio. First of all, what I see, do you have to be an engineer to work for an EPC firm?
No, you don't have to be. If we're referring to logistics, no, you don't have to be an engineer to work for an EPC firm. EPCs have the engineering component, of course, has licensed PEs and all the different disciplines depending on what the EPC does. But no, you don't have to necessarily. Okay,
and tell us a little bit about more about what you do and your most favorite and least favorite parts of the job.
Okay, so what I do, when you come into an EPC as a logistician, you'll probably work in an operations group of some type, organizing the transports, managing the transports, reporting all the different activities related to the transports and how they tie back into the project. So I've got a team of people that work, actually the company has a team of people that work in the logistics department. And then depending on the type of projects that we have and what their requirements are, sometimes the projects will have an assigned logistics team, and that team will have a manager, or sometimes called the lead, just depends on the nomenclature for the project, but it means the same thing. And they will have a couple of people assigned to help them on the team, logistics team for that project. And what we do for the project is to organize and manage the transportation of all the equipment for the project, from the nuts and bolts up to the actual process equipment. The example I give to people is when you drive by a refinery and you see all those large tanks with huge tubes and whatnot sticking out of them. The kind of thing that McDermott builds are plants like that. And the logistics department is tasked with transporting those very pieces. A lot of times they're built and fully built in one big piece, and they have to be transported that way. So that's just an example of the kind of thing that we do, but it is end to end, the nuts and bolts all the way up to those large pieces.
Okay, so Esther asks, and you might have answered this, but we'll take it a step further. May I ask more about what you do specifically in the logistics field? So you just gave us an overview of that. However, give us not perhaps a typical day, but a stressful day. What does that look like? Because I'm sure you have some, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking at my emails right now and the things that are going on with the project I'm working on, and there's quite a flurry of activity. The thing generally that I'll say about the way projects work and how they can create stress when you're working for them or in them is that, you know, they have different stages. So you have sort of a ramp up stage where you're doing a lot of planning, etc. This is, of course, after the project's been awarded to the EPC and they're doing all their initial planning. Logistics begins to get involved. You with all the different disciplines, you start to see some of the information related to the cargo itself. And then you go through the contracting process for all the different disciplines that you're going to be managing that are required to execute the work, i.e. a freight forwarding company or companies, trucking companies. You're already looking at all the different ports that you think cargo is going to be originating from. And of course, the main port of entry that you're going to use for your project. That's kind of the legwork you do on the front end. And then to keep this short, what gets stressful about the execution phase, of course, is that you make all the plans in the world to transport the equipment, but the projects, just the way that they're designed, the way that the different disciplines work together and how they fit, changes always come about. And you have to be prepared to deal with those changes. The main thing that we do is mitigate risk and expense while controlling those changes. And when I say changes, of course, I'm referring to the cargo itself, but also it's in changes within the management structure of the projects, changes within the culture of the project itself. You know, sometimes they'll change out a project director or a procurement manager, that sort of thing will get swapped out for various reasons, and it'll change the dynamic of the project. And that can cause a lot of discord that as a logistics manager, you have to be able to manage, because ultimately if the construction guys don't have the equipment they need to put together, you don't really have a project. And so logistics has a lot more importance at that point than it's given credit for. So it's important to remember that.
Okay, I like that. All right, one last, if you can answer it really fast, and then we'll move on. But I've got a question from John. How do you convince your management of the value of logistics planning and execution?
Schedule and the cost associated with it. They'll always want to know what's it going to cost to move it from A to B, and then what the duration is to move it from A to B, and then how much more it's going to cost to move it faster, because schedules get built based on theorized transit times and also theorized durations for design and fabrication, etc. And when those change, you always end up with less time to ship. So they're always looking to see, can you get it done in this much less time, and how much more is that going to cost?
Great. Okay, now we're going to move on and talk about project forwarding. Sergio, thank you so much for being available and answering questions and giving us a very clear view of what it's like to work in your sector.
If anybody has any questions for me, you can always hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help wherever possible.
Fantastic. All right, so let's bring up Jake, who is in industrial projects at DHL. Big job, a lot of pressure, I'm sure. Jake, tell us what's going on these days at DHL.
Well, these days, we are being creative. You know, with COVID, there has been a lot of changes. You know, oil and gas has had some difficult spots. And so some of the projects that we were hoping to work on this year, there's been some changes, but we've been creative, and our customers have come to us with requests for moving PPE, for moving respirators, for moving different types of emergency material, either to their job site or away from their job site. And we've had to come up with creative solutions to help them with that. You know, a lot of air freight, a lot of quick movements. And so being able to find space, talk with the client, get it done in a way that satisfies their needs has been, that's been what we've been working on lately.
It's been a lot, and it is great to see that cargoes are still moving. Certainly, you know, most, I think, companies are, at least the ports and terminals, are essential businesses, and we've seen in the news and our industry news, lots of stuff is still moving. So that will not stop, and should give, you know, make people feel optimistic about moving into this sector. Give us an answer to, is there a difference in project shipping versus general cargo and bulk shipping industries?
Yeah, I think so. I think projects, usually when you think of project cargo, you think of cargo that doesn't necessarily fit inside of a container, that fits, you know, project cargo is high, wide, heavy, it's specialized. And so it requires a lot more upfront study, preparation. There's a lot of more details that go into it, whether it be how you lift the pieces, how you lash and secure the pieces, what type of vehicle you use, what kind of limitations you have, whether it be height limitations or bridge limitations. There's a lot more that goes into project cargo when it comes to analyzing those details. Oftentimes too, when you work on a project, it has a definite start date and a definite end date. And so you create a supply chain for a period of time, and then the supply chain goes away, right? You build a refinery that's in, an obscure location or a different location, in the world, and then you ship a bunch of cargo there, and then all of a sudden the project's over, and so you kind of shut that supply chain down. And so that's a little bit of a difference when it comes to general forwarding, where you're moving commodities and containers, and it's more kind of consistent in its nature.
Okay. Do you work on more than one project at a time, typically?
Yeah, well, as the company, of course, we want to work on as many projects as we can. Depending on what your position is within the organization, if you're an operations manager, you may be dedicated to one project. The project might be so big that you only have the ability to work on that project, right? And in fact, we work on projects that are so big that we'll dedicate 9, 10, 12 people just to that one project, and they do that full time. And then when that project ends, they will move to a different project. But it just depends on the circumstances. In some cases, you may work on various projects at the same time.
Okay. All right. What to our students or job seekers that are with us today, what is your best advice for them right now?
Good question. I think that my best advice would be willing to do anything. Be open to doing things that you might not have had as your perception or as your expectation when you were in college. The circumstances that we're living in now are challenging and unique, and so if that means taking a position in a warehouse as a forklift driver, or taking a position in Port Arthur, or in a city that maybe is not your ideal city to live in, but it gets your foot in the door. It gets you connected to the company. Just having that willingness to do that, being open to different opportunities,
Okay.
being flexible. I think that goes along with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question, probably. Right now, obviously, there's very little travel, either domestically, although we have opened up some in the U.S., but also internationally. Surely that will not last forever. So are there places in the world where project shipping professionals are needed? As we look forward, where do you think the regions of greatest opportunity are, and in what kinds of projects?
Sure. So Houston, as has been mentioned by Margaret in her presentation, Houston is a good place for projects. It's one of the hubs, and certainly in the U.S., this is where you see the most activity for projects. But if you look around the world, there are other places where there's a lot of project cargo being controlled, and you can think of Milan, Italy. You can think of London, England, Dubai, Singapore, just to name a few. Santiago, Chile is quite important when it comes to mining. And so there are different regions around the world where you see those types of decisions being made. The second part of your question in regards to where I see a lot of opportunities coming up, I would say in developing countries, Africa, when it comes to LNG type of projects and other type of infrastructure projects. Africa seems to be one where there's a lot of development. So the decisions are not always made in Africa. Sometimes they're made in Europe or in other places, but there's a lot of activity there. I think you still see a lot of activity in the U.S. Gulf, whether it be with LNG, whether it be with other sectors. There's a lot going on, and so that's promising. I think being knowledgeable about what those opportunities are, being interested is important. Knowing your geography too, where are these things located, I think is very important. And sometimes as Americans, we can work on that.
Okay. All right. That's great advice. All right, everybody, back to your geography lessons. All right, Jake, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Your input has been so helpful. It's great to see you. And now we will move. Yeah, you bet. We'll move on to Ernest Bezdek with the Port of Beaumont, and we'll be able to take your questions. And I see one already. So if we can get Ernest up, say goodbye to Jake. He's coming. Okay, there he is. Ernest, welcome back. All right, so I've got a question for you from Brandon, who asks, could you please explain your role as the Director of Trade Development at the Port of Beaumont? Tell us more about that.
So basically, I'm a glorified sales guy, and I go out and call on people like Marco and Jake and Sergio and Pierre and Philip, all of them. When I hear that they're working a project and I want to perhaps influence it to come through the Port of Beaumont. We compete, ports compete, it's a friendly competition, but I compete with Houston, I compete with Port Arthur, I compete with Lake Charles, and there's a few things that we can do with regards to services and certainly pricing that we can become more competitive to entice one of their great projects to come through the port. So, and most recently, one of the big things is storage. You know, ports are busy now, believe it or not, despite COVID. We've been busy, and real estate is a prime issue with all ports. So I'll go out and I'll call Jake or Mario and say, hey, we've got some real estate here if you need some land to store projects.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's see. I've got, what government organizations do you interface with at the port?
Pretty much everybody. You know, that's one good thing about working for a port. It's a little bit, and I don't want to say use the word necessarily stable, but it's a little bit more stable because we are partially a port or a governmental entity, and we do work with a lot of the U.S. Customs, obviously, and immigrations, but also, for instance, the Port of Beaumont is a strategic port, U.S. port. So we work with the military very closely. We're the #1 military port in the U.S. and at times even in the world. So we move a lot of military equipment in support of our troops. So yeah, we work with a lot of government agencies.
Okay, great. I've got a question from Lawrence, who asks, he is seriously considering a new career path in port operations and inland waterways management. He has over 15 years in the freight forwarding and logistics side. He has a master's degree. What should he do? Other than call you right now, right, Ernest?
Yeah, exactly. Give me a call. So great question. You know, we have a group called the American Association of Port Authorities, AAPA, and you can Google that. And they have a constant list of jobs. I think the main thing I would suggest is he needs to be willing to move. Okay, you know, it's funny because as Margaret pointed out, I'm a little older here, being the Neil Diamond era. And I do have a couple of 8-track tapes from Neil Diamond, so so I did enjoy listening to Neil Diamond back in the day. But you can, I was looking at a website recently and saw a port director job for the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and I thought, man, how great that would be to move to the Bahamas and have a job right there in the Bahamas. But I've got 2 grandkids that keep me away from doing that. And but yeah, AAPA, the Waterway Journal is another good good outlet to get job requirements or job postings. But also, again, it goes back to relationships, knowing people and meeting people. The Port of Houston, there's some great guys over there that would love to talk to you about a possible career there at the port. I think it was Jake mentioned Port Arthur a little while ago. They're a growing port, and they're probably going to have quite a few positions available in the future. Right now, everything is a little bit stagnant, unfortunately, because of COVID and some of the other issues economically. But there will be jobs. There always are jobs in the port industry. So just relationships.
Okay, all right. Esther wants to know, do ports have training for entry-level new graduates at entry-level positions? And part 2, is there room to grow?
Yes, definitely room to grow. I came up through the School of Hard Knocks. Back when I started in the industry, you did not have online courses. You couldn't do that. You had to go to U of H downtown. Actually, when you left your job in downtown Houston, you had to drive, or I had to drive to U of H to actually take a course, okay? Today, you can do it from your office, or you can do it from home via online. Lamar University offers this master's degree in port management. There's just so many opportunities for people coming right out of college today that they can expand their knowledge and expand their education. That's most important. Never stop learning, okay? If you're graduating from college today, never stop learning. And answer to her question directly, yes, we have our own training. We actually send people to Houston for training on occasion. We send a lot of our people who want to expand their training, because there's opportunities over there to do that too also. But also through the associations that I mentioned earlier, ITMA, Transportation Club of Houston, all of those, most of those offer educational opportunities. So take advantage of that stuff.
Excellent. All right. So we've got another one. How does the Port of Beaumont work well with both military cargo and commercial cargo?
That's a great question, and I get that question all the time from commercial accounts. People say, you're a military port. Well, we are a military port, and we take pride in that, and we do a lot. But we treat them just like any other commercial customer, and they treat us just like a vendor. So they come to us when they have space issues or space requirements, and they say, can you handle this? And if we cannot handle it, because we have a commitment to say, Mario, that we've already committed to a project, they'll take that particular shipment of maybe 2,500 pieces of cargo, and they'll move that to Corpus Christi, another strategic port, or Port Arthur, who's a strategic port. So yeah, it's a balancing act, but we treat them as a commercial customer just like we treat all of our other customers. So it works well. We've never had an issue with that in the 20 plus years that I've been here. We've always been able to handle everything that we've been given.
Okay, that's good. We're about to bring up Philip Brown, but I think we have time for one more question for Ernest. And if any of you out there have more questions, write them in the questions, and we'll see if we can't get Ernest to answer them later, and we'll post them on our newsletter, Breakbulk One, and on the website. That would be great. But last one, you said you have experience in the shipping industry and port industry. Which did you like the most?
That's a tricky question there. I really enjoyed 20 years. The beauty part about working for a shipping company is you you can work for a variety of different nationalities or a variety. For instance, I worked for Danish companies. I worked for a Colombian company at one point, a Brazilian company. It's just a really good cross-section. You get a good cross-section working around the world with a variety of different countries. Once you come to the port industry, it's a U.S. company, you know, and you're working for the taxpayers of your district, okay? Stability-wise, Port Authority is definitely a little bit better. I would definitely recommend if you can get in on the ground level with a Port Authority, and don't be afraid to take those ground level positions. That's important, because once you get your foot in the door, you got it, and you can work your way up. But shipping companies are a little bit more, what's the word, reactive to world events and to the economy. You know, you see where these companies, they'll lay off, you know, 200 people or whatever when the economy goes down. And I saw a question earlier on here regarding rates and how somebody can continue at the current rates, and that happens. You know, ship companies go out of business. So there's a little bit of a risk there, but both of them are extremely rewarding. And the shipping end of the industry led to my position with the Port Authority. So you have to start somewhere, and you need to start somewhere. And I recommend both of them very highly.
Okay. All right. Ernest, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very informative.
Great.
And yeah, and I appreciate your support of students and young professionals coming in and looking for jobs in your sector. Very appealing. All right. Now we have Philip Brown, who is representing the ocean carrier sector. He's with SAL Heavy Lift. Philip, tell me what's going on these days with you.
Well, this has been a very interesting year with COVID. You know, December is always pretty busy for a lot of cargoes trying to ship out before the end of the calendar year. And then January was a bit slow. And then February started picking back up. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and sort of surprised everybody. We are keeping very busy right now on our vessels with good cargoes, which is very rewarding. Renewables segment is doing quite well. I think I can speak for not just SAL Heavy Lift, but other carriers are seeing quite a bit of renewables work. Oil and gas is certainly a bit slower right now, but we are still seeing quite a bit of movement of materials around the world. So it's overall okay right now. It could be better. Rates could be better, but thankfully bunker prices are low.
Oh, well, that's good. All right. So let's see. Valerie wants to know, how can shipping companies, especially MPP ship operators, survive with such low present freight rates?
That's a tricky question. I don't think in the long run that it's sustainable, to be honest. You know, when you start getting into a dangerous game of everyone undercutting the other carrier to try and just win business, just to fill your vessels up, it's a dangerous. As far as managing expectations of our clients, whether it be EPCs or freight forwarders or OEMs or cargo owners of projects like Exxon or Chevron, it's very dangerous because when you start undercutting rates and going in with super cheap rates, you sort of set an expectation based on certain trade lanes or certain volumes or certain weights of cargo that this is what is acceptable or what is normal. And once you start doing that for a period, and others as well, it can bring down the market to the point where it's not sustainable. And then you start having companies that do end up, you know, becoming insolvent. So I don't think in the long run it is sustainable to have the rates that we have now. Again, as I mentioned, fortunately that the bunker rates are low. You know, I came into this in 2008 into the shipping market, which was at the peak and also both ends of the peak, I guess, the peak and the valley of shipping. So I got to see it when things were super, super hot, and also when the bottom sort of fell out of the market in late 2008. The key difference there is that the rates went down, but the bunker levels were still a little bit higher. So that's, I think, one of our saving graces right now is that bunker fuel as a whole, no one's talking about IMO 2020 right now. Everyone's talking about COVID. So.
Right, but certainly we'll have to circle back to IMO 2020.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about the different jobs that are contained within an ocean carrier, a specialized ocean carrier like SAL.
There's a number of different jobs. You've got people in engineering. We have an entire separate engineering department and actually a standalone engineering company that does work outside of just SAL projects, which is very cool. That's at our headquarters in Hamburg.
How long has that been around? A long time, Philip?
I don't know how long it's been sort of a standalone company, to be honest.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But SAL engineering has been around for a while. And we have a supporting office in the Philippines as well. Then you have have your office management. Every position that you would normally have in an office, you've got human resources, you've got accounting, you've got your vessel management people, your crewing department, operations, the chartering, which is the commercial people that are actually getting fixtures and booking cargo to move the cargo on our vessels. You have people in what we call cargo allocation that basically put together the Tetris that is our stow plans, and they assign different cargoes to different vessels, and we're constantly moving them around because dates change or vessels change. So they have a very busy job. And then you have documentation, and you also have all of your invoicing. And then in some cases, you also have in-house agency as far as vessel agents.
Okay. All right. We've got a question here. How important is technical knowledge of cargo vessels, and how did you develop this knowledge throughout your career?
I think it's very important. I would say the bulk of my knowledge as far as knowing and understanding the vessels that I had at my first place of employment as well as SAL really came from on-the-job learning. School taught me a lot about how to interface with others, work with others in a group, having bosses in the form of different professors. But as far as specific training like that, I really got, I would say, on the job. And also, it's not just important to know your own vessels, but as a carrier, it's also important to understand what your competitors have, what speeds they can offer, what kind of intake they can offer, what kind of lifting capacity they have, because that helps drive your commercial decisions when you're in the chartering side.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so let's hear your advice for people who are looking for a job. How just on average, how long do you think a job search might take for an entry-level position, and how can one be best equipped to be sort of at the front of the line for consideration?
It's hard to say right now because thankfully I'm not looking for a job currently, but I do understand from some friends that have looked for jobs, graduates, I guess, from December of last year that are now with the company, and also some May graduates, that it kind of depends on what's available. And I think one of the things that I think is important for a lot of students get hung up on their first job on salary instead of looking at the long-term growth potential for a position or a role, either within a company or using that first job as a stepping stone into a career. I don't think it's important for your first job. I would say nowadays that is probably not likely the place that you're going to end up for the rest of your career. So you should work hard, but you should not just look for the highest paying or the highest salary or best benefits job for your first job. You should look for a job that offers you a lot of growth opportunities, a lot of learning, some travel to learn about other countries and cultures. And that's, I think, more important.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's something that we've we hear that Project Cargo sector, and I'm sure yours as well, the maritime transport, it does open the door to travel, and that, you know, may not be possible right now, but looking longer term, that can be a big upside to a job in this industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. One last question, and then we're going to move on to Pierre. Aurora wants to know, what happens if we already have experience but not the degree? Can we still get an entry-level position?
Aurora, I think that entirely depends on the company that's hiring. I think that there are certainly some companies that are looking for, you must check all the boxes as far as these requirements. And then I think some companies sort of list requirements as an ideal candidate. But if you have 5 years of experience, but maybe not a degree, they would rather you be able to come in fresh and learn the processes of that company, but already have 5 years of experience working in that industry. That really depends on the employer. There are certain companies, certain OEMs that are very focused on, I guess there is let's say an internal limit on where you can grow as far as positions, based on whether you have a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, or higher education. As far as a lot of entry-level positions though, I would say even if you don't meet all the requirements, all they can say is no. I mean, I've applied for jobs that I didn't meet the requirements of and got called in for an interview. So, you know, go for it. And the more you interview, the more comfortable you'll become also interviewing. And you'll also learn a little bit about the process and a little about yourself. So I would say no, that you don't have to have the degree for a lot of these entry-level positions.
Okay. All right. That is really good advice. Philip, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your experiences with us and offering tips for students, recent grads looking for a job. And now we will turn to Sergio, who's covering a huge amount of territory, land transportation, barge transport, equipment. And I really liked what you said earlier, Sergio, that sometimes the equipment for one of these big moves doesn't exist and has to be invented. So that is very intriguing, I think. So tell us about sort of the wide range of a company like Mammut.
Yeah, so it is something that's actually fascinating about our industry. Maybe more specifically, the heavy lift industry and heavy haul industry is that if a piece of equipment doesn't exist, we have to invent it, right? And so we like to push the industry forward with innovation. So clients will come to us, and sometimes it's just dreams, right? And you look 10 years down the road and these dreams are happening. They're not happening because we sit around and we look at each other. They're happening because we keep pushing the boundaries of technology. We keep pushing the commercial boundaries, things that would cost $1 million, and we offer it for tens of millions. Well, for our clients, those might mean nothing in terms of efficiencies, in terms of safety advantages. And so if we can push all these boundaries all together, I think we get to where we are today. If we look at the last 10 years, Philip mentioned 2008. If I look at when I started in 2008 and all the advances that we've made, and that's huge. And that's by doing that. That's by pushing the boundaries, and that's very important for everyone in the industry.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about your role and what your day looks like.
Sure. So my current role is what we call tendering management. Tendering is basically estimating. So my role is having an engineering background, and I've had several different positions in the company. I've been sales director, I've been branch manager in the company. And so with all this experience and the experience of my team, I have people that work for me that are ex-project managers, ex-account managers, several of them are engineers as well. And so our role is basically to make the offers to the client in a way that makes us commercially and technically attractive. So again, I use Sergio as an example. Sergio, working for an EPC, may come to a company like us and say, we need to move a piece of equipment from point A to point B, and needs to be lifted in position. So my team basically will handle the what we call the RFQ, the request for quote, and we'll make sure that it goes out in the technical, I was going to say sound, not just sound, but superior alternative than our competitors. That's what we all strive to do. And we talk about COVID-19. Today, more than ever, is the time to be different and to differentiate ourselves. We have to be creative. We have to stand out in front of our clients. It doesn't matter what company we are. You can be the biggest in your field. You still have to differentiate yourself. So that's a big part of what we do. We really try very hard to be creative, and ultimately we're there to get the work awarded, which is, again, today more important than ever.
Absolutely. So how has COVID-19 affected your operations?
Yeah, so like many, it has affected it. We are seeing some slowdown. Our industry is always a little bit behind when it comes to slowdown. So COVID-19 may not impact us until maybe the end of the year, for example. We have ongoing projects which are already funded, they're already ongoing. And so all this will keep going. We're seeing some slowdown, but in general, it does keep going. What we do have working for us, and I think many of the other panelists have that as well, is like I mentioned earlier, we are in many different segments. So Bill mentioned that as well. Petrochem is down. It definitely is down. There's no question about it. We hate to say it. Petrochem is a big part of the breakbulk industry, but we have the ability to refocus as well. So, for example, maybe the civil industry is still there, is still present, is still happening. Okay, so maybe there's a refocus towards the civil industry. There's a refocus towards the power industry. So we're able to basically make all those moves and to adapt to the challenges of today's market.
Okay, let's see. I have a question. This person says, I don't want to be stuck behind a desk 40 hours a week. What do you suggest?
Well, first of all, I say me neither. You know, something that was mentioned earlier is, you know, what to do on your first job. So I will share my experience. And when I graduated, I had two offers that were interesting to me. I had one here at Mahmoud, and I had one at a big EPC. My offer at the big EPC was 10 to 15% higher than my offer at Mahmoud. And yet I took the offer at Mahmoud. Now, I'm not insinuating by this, don't work for an EPC, but I had to make a decision as an engineer. Was I going to be in a cubicle in a room of 200 engineers, or was I going to be in a group of 10 to 15 engineers? So the opportunity for me in that specific role was clear. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to be behind a desk for 8 hours a day and be lost in the weeds. I will say, again, not to be knocking on EPCs, but there are certain roles within EPCs that are more advantageous. This wasn't one for me. So we've already heard that. Just be open to moving, be flexible. And again, I will piggyback on what Philip also said. Don't look at money on your first job. Money is always a consideration, right? Always will be. It's a drive. That's why we do what we do at the end of the day, right? Don't let people tell you they don't work for money. We all do. We need to make a living. However, don't let that be your number one decision-making factor on your first job. Chances are you will regret it.
All right. Okay. So last question, and this will pretty much wind up our show today. What should a new graduate do now to break into your sector?
Fill out an application is number one. You know, I will say this. You know, I mentioned that as a company, we have to be creative. We have to show why we're different and why we're better than that competitor. As a new graduate, you're no different. You have to do the exact same thing. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, there are tons of applicants on the market. So now more than ever, you have to show why you are different. And so I'll go back to something I mentioned earlier. By all means, it is very important. Your degree is important, right? We heard from Margaret from U of H. Very important. Your degree is important. Your experience is important. Any experience that you may have gained during your education, as far as working for companies in the summer, whatever that is, very important. But for me, what is even more important is your attitude when you go into your first job, right? And so work hard, be humble in what you do, and just having that good attitude goes a very, very long way. You can be the smartest person in your class. You can have done all sorts of, you can have a very nice resume. If your attitude is not on point these days, you will be cut. That's just how it is. It's the plain hard truth. So I would emphasize that, just on top of flexibility and openness, attitude on your first job is everything. And that is what will determine whether you advance or you stay in your position longer than you should.
All right. Thank you. All right. That is excellent advice that is useful to not only people looking for a job, but people who are currently employed. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, it was great to hear from you, Pierre. And with that, I will close. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today and sticking with it. A lot of great information. The replay will be available shortly. Look for the link in your inbox. And remember, come back and join us on Thursday morning. So until then, stay safe and we'll see you soon.